Greetings, respected lecturers and classmates. I am Stron from Group 5, and our team are so delighted to talk about the topic of environmental dimensions of globalization and its positive and negative impact on a country. Our team consists of 11 members, which is the big one, and you can see our team members' name on this slide. Here's the table of contents. It has introductions, the detailed accounts on environmental aspect, welcoming and unwelcoming impacts of environmental aspect, practical solutions to the unwelcoming impacts, and the improvements to the environmental aspect. As I'm the first presenter, so I will walk you through the introduction point. Globalization has had far-reaching effects on our lifestyle. It has led to faster access to technology, improved communications and innovations. It has also brought people of different cultures together, and besides that, it has led to a new era in the economic and country's development. However, globalization has also created some areas of concern, and one of the noticeable impacts is on the environment. How does globalization have an impact on environment? What are those impacts? How can we overcome and improve those issues? Well, by going through this presentation, our team members will provide a brief details related to each point wisely. Without further ado, I would like to give a floor to my team members Muniniat for further detail. Thank you.
So thank you so much, Gexron, for a very clear introduction. I'm Munini, I'm the second presenter. For the second point, it is going to focus on detailed account on environmental aspect. So now let's get started. Before we get into detail on environmental dimension of globalization, it is good to look back at the definition of globalization as a whole. Globalization refers to a multi-dimensional set of social processes that create, multiply, and intensify worldwide social interdependencies and exchange while at the same time fostering in people a growing awareness of connections between local and distant. And in the last session, we have already examined the economic, political, cultural, and ideological dimension of globalization already. So it is also important to focus on the environmental dimension of globalization as well. From the whole definition of globalization, we then can also give a clear definition in the context of environmental dimension as well. For the definition of environmental dimension of globalization, it refers to the understanding of globalization as a process of manifestation of widespread environmental issues caused by global environmental pollution. Moreover, the global aspect of environmental way of thinking has become the focus of attention because environmental problems usually occur on a global scale caused by the process of science and technology and mainly due to increased economic integration. What is more is that globalization has brought significant conceptual change in the way of thinking about the environment, and many of us now see environmental problems as problems of international significance, not only as national interest in terms of protecting our the ocean and the atmosphere from warming. So, after deriving some aspect and thinking from the definition of the environmental dimension of globalization, we can see that two important interrelated contexts should be mentioned. The first context is that global environmental issues arising from the global economic crisis are far from the national and regional frameworks. Globalization caused international trade growth and accelerated financial flows as well as greater cooperation among countries and innovations in science and technology. However, it also contributes to environmental issues. With the development of society, economic growth, we can also see the increasing population, which at the end resulted in increasing demand for products that are necessary for life. Therefore, it has become necessary to shift to the industrial mode of production. From industrial mode of production, it certainly has positive side in terms of increased production and economic growth, but on the other hand, it endangers the environment through the emission of harmful gases into the air, water, and soil. And last but not least, for the second context is that it is not possible to solve the emerging environmental problems by restricting them to a local area or through local action, and this concept has become engraved in people's minds. Therefore, along the process of globalization as a whole, where environmental organizations are created for the sake of easier coordination of international environmental policy. So now uh, it is the end of the second point, and I would like to invite the next presenter for further discussion. Thank you.
Good evening, teacher, and hello, classmate. Just now we have heard about the environmental aspect of globalization. So, how do the rise of globalization benefit our environment? In the third point of our presentation, we will discuss about the welcoming impact of globalization on a country environment. The first benefit is related to the transnational linkage, and it is in the form of importation. As we all know, for developing countries, globalization results in the rise of importation on machinery and manufactured goods from developed countries. This is one beneficial aspect on our environment. The reason is that developed countries are what we call pollution-efficient countries. Pollution-efficient countries are those countries that manage to produce manufactured goods with greener and eco-friendly industry. Moreover, it is recognized that multinational firms use cleaner type of energy than local firms and therefore have more energy efficient process. So as a result, we manage to lower the domestic carbon dioxide and sulfur dioxide emission, which are proven to be the cause of air pollution. Another benefit in the form of importation is that globalization can help developing countries to become a pollution efficient country too. Globalization helps spread the positive effect of environmental friendly technology and practice. Also, it allowed developing countries to import those greener technology to develop better environmental regulation and standard. Some examples of the green technology include solar system, wind technology, waste management, and more. There are many more advantages that we have gained from globalization. So I would like to invite Panya to further introduce the welcoming impact of environmental aspect.
Besides what Honey have mentioned, globalization also help protect environment. Globalization is the forefront of creating public awareness about environmental standards through the platforms of international activities such as fair trade and eco-labels. The success of this environmental public awareness has resulted in consumer preferences evolving. Producers are able to build their customer base by producing eco-friendly products. And another point to mention is World Trade Organization also encourage its member countries for sustainable development and environmentally friendly trade policies. For instance, the green provisions of WTO direct countries to protect human, animal, and plant life, and conserve their exhaustible natural resources. Apart from the WTO, regional trade agreements, known as OTA, are another feature of globalization that promote environmentally sustainable policies. As countries seek to join OTA, they are also made to embrace environmental cooperation agreements. And many countries have developed national policy that environmental impact assessments must be carried out in any trade agreement, which means that any country that signs trade agreement with those countries must also automatically sign environmental cooperation deals. And that's all of my part. Let's give this chance to my teammate to present you the another point.
So, hello teacher and hello everyone. I'm Kanika. After you have heard about the welcoming impacts of environmental dimensions of globalization, now without further delay, I would like to talk about the other part, which is the unwelcoming impacts of environmental aspect. In this part, we also divide it into four main negative impacts. Monica and I will be responsible for 2 points each. So now let's move to the first impact, which is about the population growth. You might wonder that, like, what are the environmental problems due to this population growth? Population growth is the increase in the number of people living in a particular area. Since population can grow exponentially, resource depletion can occur rapidly. Population in developing countries tend toward using substantially more resources, while population in developing countries feel impacts of environmental problems more quickly. As we all know that more people require more resources, which means that as the population increases, the earth resource deplete more rapidly. The result of these depletions is global warming, deforestation, and loss of biodiversity. As humans strive the earth of resources to accommodate rising population numbers. Population growth also results in increasing greenhouse gases, mostly from CO2 emissions. As greenhouse gases increase, so do climate patterns, ultimately resulting in long-term patterns called climate change. While the interconnected problems of population growth and environmental issues seem overwhelming, it is important to remember that we all, as humans, can make change that positively impacts of the planet. And this is the first impacts, the main impacts of uh, environmental globalization. So let's move to the second point, which is about the climate change. The planet climate has constantly been changing over geological time, with significant fluctuations of global average temperatures. However, this current period of warming is occurring more rapidly than any other past events. It has become clear that humanity has caused most of the last century warming by releasing heat-trapped gases that, like it's commonly called, greenhouse gases to power our modern life. People are doing this through burning fossil fuels, agriculture, and land use and other activities that drive climate change. Also, climate change involves not only rising temperatures but also extreme weather events such as rising sea level, shifting wildlife population and habitat, and a range of other impacts. And we all know that if people all around the globe do not and will not take action to prevent this, the climate change itself is will is and will continue to harm to other people all around the world. And this is the 2 point of my part, and it's come to the end now. I would like to invite Molika to continue her part. Thank you.
So thank you, Kanika, for your precise presentation on the aspect of the unwelcoming impact of globalization on the environment. Now I would like to continue the presentation by raising up another two main aspects on the unwelcoming impact, which are the transboundary pollution and the hazardous waste industrial accident warfare. So first let's talk about the transboundary pollution. The transboundary pollution refers to the pollution that originates in a country. However, the effect of this pollution can cause harm to another country environment by it travel across the border through the pathway like air or water. So upon the development of the globalization, the human demand rapidly increased. Hence, the capacity to contain the pollution of the atmosphere started to change. The potential of the pollution to spill from one country to another is highly likely to increase as well. Besides that, the excessive carbon emission that derive from our daily life activity that come to the atmosphere also contribute to this problem as well. On the other hand, this problem is recognized by the United Nations that it is a serious problem and it requires proper solution to solve both at international and national level. So what are the problems that derive from the transboundary pollutions? We have found out three main effects of transboundary pollution, which is acidification of soil and water. This caused by the acid rains. The air pollution such as haze or smoke that could cause lung cancer or other breathing issues. And another one is polluted downstream water that caused by the upstream activities. Let's move to the next part, which is about the hazardous waste industrial accident warfare. So, as you all know that there are millions of chemical substances in the world, and those chemicals can be found in the industry, in the manufacture, in the factory, and so on. So, what happened to the waste that were taken out from those places? Those wastes that are contaminated with the chemical substance are left on the earth, on the land, and those wastes could cause very serious harm that it can threaten the human and the wildlife. Relying on this, I would like to raise an example of the nuclear waste. The waste that come from the nuclear power plant are very hazardous yet it contain the radioactive substance. The leak of the waste could cause thousands people to die. It could cause health issues. Also, it can affect the livelihood of the people around those areas as well. And here are the effects of the hazardous waste industrial accident warfare. We have divided it into two types, the short-term effect and the long-term effect. The short-term effect can be seen as the water pollution, the death of living organisms that attack to the waste disposal problem. And the long-term effect, it is the most serious one that can threaten the human and the life of the living organism on the earth. So those problems are the health disease like cancers, the soil pollution, the air pollution, and the destruction of the natural resources. These problems that we have pointed out are very important. Those countries in the world have to share the same burden to this problem. However, I believe that the least developed and the developing countries are likely to be adversely affected by this problem. Therefore, it requires appropriate solutions to propose in order to solve the problem effectively. And that is all on my part. I would like to give the floor to my teammate. Thank you.
Good evening, lecturer, and good evening, everyone. So now let's move on to practical solutions to the unwelcome impacts. So the first solution is in response to the overpopulation growth And the first solution is promote family plannings. By promoting family planning, we simply educating men and women about the contraceptions that can have a big impact to reduce the number of population growth. When Iran introduced a national family planning program in 1989, its fertility rate fell from 5.6 births per woman to 2.6 in a decade. Voluntary family planning has been widely adopted throughout the world, and more than half of all the couples in developing countries now use a modern method of contraceptions for healthy timing, spacing, and limiting of birth to their desired family size. And the second one is government incentive. Over the past 60 years, populations control has become an increasingly urgent issue worldwide as the growing population strain has already limited resource. The use of financial incentive to promote family planning is an innovative approach that has potential to make a contribution to afford to better manage population growth. By using this method, people will start to consider the offer and volunteer to take part in this action, which will bring many benefits to both parties. And now let's move on to the solution in response to climate change. The first of all is restoring nature conservations. Restore nature conservation is simply restore reforesting efforts that has become more crucial than ever as deforestation drive climate change and threaten the survival of the unique wildlife everywhere. Every country should consider planting more trees in order to prevent unpredictable events that might happen in the future. The second one is renewable resource. By changing our main energy source to clean and renewable resource. Solar, wind, geothermal, and biomass could be the solutions. And this means that the renewable are increasingly displacing dirty fossil fuel in the power sector, offering the benefits of lower emissions of carbon and the other type of pollutions. Last but not least is restrictions law on deforestation. Government should practice aspect of forest law enforcement in order to prevent the forest from illegally burning that spread the big impact to environment that lead to the main cause of climate change. And moreover, humans activity of regarding to deforestation should be considered. And the second one is a solutions, the reductions of transboundary pollutions. Addressing transnational pollution requires both international and domestic law, and transnational pollution is an international problem that demands and deserves the attention of international legal mechanisms such as treaty agreement, arbitrations, and international management and governance. At the same time, transnational pollution problems can often be addressed more effectively and efficiently through the domestic law legal systems. An ideal approach is to harmonize transnational pollution management and dispute resolution under international and domestic law. The country that polluted is responsible for their pollutions across borders, but there are some solutions that most countries need to be considered. The pollution countries should try to reduce their pollutant by creating conservation of their depleted resource tree, which when they grow, they will block out the airborne pollutant from entering their neighbors. The country that receive the pollutant could create a defensive barrier of tree to block out the ongoing pollutant, since we all know that trees need carbon dioxide, which in turn produce oxygen that actually help clean up the air. Moreover, government in each country should have technological improvement to reduce pollution so that it won't spread any impact to their neighbor country. So now let's move on to the solution in response to hazardous waste. The most desirable is to reduce the quantity of waste at its source or to recycle the material for some other productive use. First, government should set a standards of use to industry owners which wish to invest in their country. The industry must minimize their waste to any standard that the government sets so that it won't go beyond the limit.
Secondly, government should encourage the industrial sector to recycle over metal construction, horticulturals, wood, slag, and plastic. As we know that when hazardous wastes are recycled, less energy is needed to obtain raw material and to manufacture products, which can help lessen the impact of climate change and decrease air pollution. And that is the end for solutions. And now let's move on to the next following points.
Good evening, lecturer and classmate. Now let's move to the other part. It is the improvement to the environmental aspect. There are three main points such as wildlife preservation. It will be presented by me, and the next point is about CSR, corporate social responsibility. It will be presented by Narat, and the last part is about waste to energy. It will be presented by Jamnan. So now let's move to the first part. It is wildlife preservation. So what is wildlife preservation? It is the practice of protecting wildlife and um, wildlife species and their habitat as well. For example, there is one of a private non-profit land conservation corporation, um, like to to protect the natural area, open spaces, wildlife and wildlife conservation for education and research on wildlife. Um, in that area, um, the land they open to public to enter it so that the visitor can do some activities such as hiking, biking, bird watching, uh, photography, and study something like that. However, they against some of the activity as well, such as um, sport hunting, fishing, dumping, and off-road vehicle, because those of the like those activity affect to the animal and species around that area. So from this example, we think that we could improve our environment in our country by doing so. However, we believe that it will be some differences, such as we may need a private sector to invest in this project, and they may cooperate with the government in order for a better like in order to get a better result. Um, so they can use some of the land for the conservation. However, they can include the tourism activities such as what we mentioned before, like hiking, biking, bird watching, something like that in that area. So we can earn some money from those activities to support the conservation. Um, however, we also need to protect it by restrict the entry law in order to protect the animal in that area. And in conclusion, we are not only protecting the wildlife and species, but also promoting our tourism side. And this is all of my part. So now let's move to the next part. It will be presented by Naret. He will explain more about CXR. Thank you.
Good evening, lecturer and classmate. I would like to raise a one idea that we can reap out uh, the benefit from this aspect. I mean, environmental globalization. And this evening, I would like to raise about green energy and CSR. But first, let's take a look at CSR and what is CSR. CSR is a corporate social responsibility. It means that it is a concern from the company toward the society and the environment. And there are three principles of CSR, which is accountability, sustainability, and transparency. Uh, For accountability, it is the concern with an organization recognizing that its action affects the external environment and therefore assuming responsibility for effects of its action. And sustainability is a concern with the effect which action taken in the present has upon the action available in the future. And for transparency means that the external impact of the action of the organization can be as content from that organization reporting and permanent fact are not distinguished within the report. So whenever the company or the firm practice CSR, it will benefit the environment. Also can boost the economic as well to provide a healthy society to the country. So I have a case study about a green energy from a Apple. Here is a solar. The Apple have implement the project, which is solar arrays and wind farm, as well as emerging technology like bio biogas, fuel cell, micro hydro generation system, and energy storage technologies. So these are the green energy from Apple company. Um, Currently, Apple has 25 operational renewable energy projects around the world, totally 626 megawatt of generation capacity, with 286 megawatts of solar PV generation coming online in 2017. It's most ever in the 1 year. It has also 15 more projects in construction. Once built over 1.4 gigawatt of clean renewable energy generation will be spread across 11 countries. Um, so this project have give Apple's company with enormous energy to run the company as well as to produce the energy for the consumer. And when Apple Store adopt the CSR into their internal practice of operation, their firm, it can benefit them with a lot of advantage like energy saving costs, reduce costs from spending on fuel, buying fuel and stuff. But instead, uh, by this project, green energy it can reduce greenhouse gas emission, prevent CO2 from entering the atmosphere, and improve energy option, which is very good from the practice of CSR, and they can benefit from the nature, actually from the sun, which have produced the enormous energy and also environmental saving and environmental environmental clean, and it also can sustain the and ensure the long run of the company into the future, and it also gain fame. And that's all from my presentation.
Good evening, lecturer, and good evening, classmate. My name is Tapichaman, and I am the last presenter of today's presentation. Like the previous presenter, I am going to use one last project that we believe can have reduced negative impact and reap more benefit for our country. So I'm pretty sure that everyone has heard about a country called Norway. Norway has been operating the project which turned waste into energy for more than 10 years now and have achieved tremendous results. Though to begin with, Norway is already a country where most wells come from their natural oil. They still need to find a more efficient and upgrading way to produce another source of energy. That source of energy comes from no other than waste from your house. Basically, they use waste incinerator to burn waste and then generate it into energy. For a long time, we could mostly hear and see a lot of countries try to clear their landfill by paying money to drop it elsewhere around the world, especially in developing countries. In contrast, a wealthy country like Norway choose to think differently. They instead provide service to take out their trash, which they get paid for. Then they would turn those waste into energy that could provide enough energy for the whole city in 1 year. So this is a quote from Christopher Beck-Wesley, communication advisor for the Oslo municipality state. At the moment, the city of Oslo can take 410,000 of waste a year, and we import 45,000 tonnes from the UK. Europe as a whole currently dumps 100 million tonnes of waste in landfills every year. So there is clearly great potential in using waste for energy. As you just heard, the advisor projected a high potential for the project. Consequently, it is also hard to imagine the amount of waste dumped around the globe every year, if 100 million is just from Europe alone. So on the other hand, in 10 or 20 years in the future, I believe Cambodia's population will reach a certain number. And if we do not start to think about adapting to new solutions to manage our waste from now, I am afraid that the state of our environment will impact every aspect of our country. I could envision that Cambodia would be able to structure and progress in turning waste into energy in the next couple of years if we take this seriously. But first, we need a cooperation from three alliances: the government, the waste management company, and last, our Cambodian citizen, which is fundamental to be able to operate the project with generate energy. Second, everyone involved has to understand how to separate waste into three bags: blue for plastic to be recycled, green for food waste to make biogas, and white for everything else that goes through waste plant. So in conclusion, despite being a developing country, I believe that Cambodia could use this method to maintain a clean environment, create more jobs, and increase the country economy by clearing trash from other countries, plus selling energy to nearby countries. And that was the end of our presentation. Orally, I hope everyone has got to know more about the environmental state around the globe and its impact, especially Cambodia, and also understand why environment is everyone's business, as environment is a dimension of globalization. I would like to thank everyone for your patience, and if you have any question, please feel free to ask.